Wait, what the fuck? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, HollywoodShono here, about to give you another Injustice Gods Among Us video. And in this video we do our Character Tips and Tricks patch 2.12 version. It's been quite a while since I've actually done a video like this, but if I've inspired any of you guys from the Buffing Bad Cards video, we're going to be using the guideline for our bad cards to actually show off some combinations within cards. So we're going to go into a battle, and we're going to go open up the rosters. These are going to be 3-person rosters, and we're going to, of course, sell if the card sucks or if a card is usable in certain situations. So everybody say hi to YouTube. That's in the Twitch chat. And I guess we can throw the webcam over the Blackest Night logo. We don't really give a shit about that. So everybody, of course, we have to turn the webcam off. But all right. So the way this review is going to work, we're going to be talking about 3 character rosters that we can use. Obviously, here's the thing with Injustice 2 Aquaman. While he is playable, I don't think he really is meta-defining at the moment, only because he just doesn't do a whole lot by himself. A team obviously would run something like that, but then if you run something like that, you also have to run Injustice 2 Superman or Arkham Knight Batman. And in that case, you would just say, screw the extra dot damage, it's not worth it. Now, obviously, Injustice 2 Aquaman is best countered for Arkham Knight Catwoman, because Injustice 2 Aquaman can actually rinse that dot, and when it lands on Arkham Knight Catwoman, and we're going to show that as a demonstration. We're going to let Arkham Knight Catwoman do a dot on us, but we're going to purposely throw some power generation gear on Injustice 2 Aquaman. So we're going to be doing some battles within this, and we're going to kind of show off some abilities. So, I think this will be fine.
Aquaman.
I mean, I want something that does basic damage, but that shouldn't be a problem. So we're going to be using the mirror match to kind of base a lot of stuff. Now, obviously, Injustice 2 Superman could be super annoying. So let us throw in a weaker card like Bane. So the whole point of this video is I want to show you guys the huge strength for Injustice 2 Aquaman and the best counter for it. Obviously, you can use it on the League of Assassins and Death Knife's Ibis-Stick combo. You can also use it with the LexCorp helmet. You can also use it with the League of Assassins blade, but the best combination is just overwhelm and murder Arkham Knight Catwoman. So here we're kind of just stalling out. So there's the Trident toss. We're going to reflect that back to Aquaman. So you see the 2837. So there is Arkham Knight Catwoman. That's exactly who we want. So we're going to block this. So we're taking the 2500. Now Catwoman is going to take that damage whether she tags out or not, and that just obliterates her right away because of the extra damage. So you basically use Injustice 2 Aquaman to rinse dots. It's not used for anything else, and the Diablo gear is not an acceptable dot. That doesn't do enough damage. And that's my personal opinion on that. So here's the really scary part. If Aquaman did not survive that, is he probably would have took a lot of damage when the thing got reversed. 2,553 XP, 1,950 credits. So that's the best case scenario for Injustice 2 Aquaman, is rinsing dots off Arkham Knight Catwoman. The problem is you run into Arkham Knight Catwoman about 2 to 3% of the time in multiplayer. So Arkham Origins Bane, for example, you could run a team like this. However, a team like that would actually be better with Arkham Harley Quinn. And you could also run the Joker. The big significance with Arkham Knight and Arkham Origins Batman is the fact that both of them can start at 2 bars of power, and Arkham Knight Batman can actually start at 3 bars of power. The other strength that Arkham Origins Bane has is that when he goes under 50% health, no matter the bar of power that everybody else has, they will gain a bar of power. So we're going to use Arkham Origins Bane as an example. Now, obviously, in a perfect world, you would not use double Batmans. You'd probably use Arkham Harley Quinn. The problem with Arkham Harley Quinn is the card sucks. So for Batman's case, we're going to use the League of Assassins Death Knives, the Ibis-Stick, and we're going to use the Enchantress gear. For Arkham Origins Batman, we are going to use the 4th World Mace just to do a little bit of area damage. And we probably actually should use the Ibis-Stick on him, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. We'll use 2-piece LexCorp. So we're going to be doing a lot of these demonstrations within the Mirror Match of Bonus Battle 6, just so you guys can see how everything reacts. So in the second test fight, we have Arkham Origins Bane, Arkham Knight Batman, and Arkham Origins Batman. So this is the best case scenario when you're using Arkham Origins Bane. You could use the Joker, but I just find the Batmans would be a lot better. So you have to make sure that your Arkham Origins Bane does not get obliterated. I don't think a special would do that, but we have to make sure of that. Alright, so there's the Vengeance. So you see Arkham Origins Batman at 3 bars. There's the Winged Avenger. And that did not even take out all the health. So you see that Arkham Knight Batman is already at 2 bars. So we're just going to use the damage buff. You could tap in between, and that would work too. So the big strength with the League of Assassins Depth Knives and the Ibis Stick is the fact that not only do you do area damage, but the Enchantress gear can come in and do some work. You can even knock people out during the batarangs, which is absolutely hilarious. And Arkham Knight Batman is an insane card. This review is obviously about Arkham Origins Bane, but that's the best case scenario, is using him to gain a bar of power in your other guys, especially in multiplayer, especially when it's a difference between 2 and 3 bars. Unfortunately, Arkham Origins Bane really does not cut the meta, so that's really unfortunate. We're not even going to talk about Aquaman and Regime Aquaman because both cards are horrible. I will mention one thing about Regime Aquaman. If you want to power drain Lobo, Red Lantern, Hal Jordan, or Static, this is the only way that you can do it. However, I'm not sure if 2-piece LexCorp counters that. So that's really the only good thing Regime Aquaman is for, and Prime Aquaman is just garbage. Bane is garbage. Now, Luchador Bane really uses a specific setup. Usually adds in Batgirl. So a lot of teams will use Batgirl. That way you can gear up Luchador Bane if we had all the gear slots. Let's say, for example, the Cloak of Destiny. A lot of people would run the Ibis Stick for more damage. And I'm not sure what they would run for another special 2 item. Or you could just run the special 1 item and use the League of Assassins Depth Knives, and you can do like 150,000 damage. I'm not exaggerating with that with Luchador Bane. If he gets a stun off and a special 1, it's basically lights out for your entire team. The only hard counter to that is obviously using the Red Sun team, because Luchador Bane can't stun him. So he's not going to be able to do the ridiculous damage, and he cannot crit. So somebody like the Red Suns could actually survive Luchador Bane. Now, the third person that people usually use with Batgirl in that sense would be Killer Frost. And the reason for that is because of the 50% power dampening. This is a really solid team because you can use Killer Frost defensively, you can combo with Black Ice, and you can even just stay in the fight long enough. You can even gear up Batgirl offensively, or you can throw on 2-piece LexCorp. That way Luchador Bane can do his thing and just do all the damage of that. So we don't have Luchador Bane leveled up, but that's basically how you would gear him up. Batgirl you can kind of just throw basic damage on, and Killer Frost you would throw the 4th world on, and that would work perfectly fine. So if you throw Cassandra Cain Batgirl in, that works perfectly fine. However, instead of Batgirl, you would actually use 600 Wonder Woman, because let's face it, Cassandra Cain Batgirl Special 1 is absolutely batshit crazy when you combine the extra stun mechanics, and Cassandra Cain Batgirl herself can stun with Special 1. So as long as the first hit stuns, the 3 hits that she throws afterwards is absolutely insane. So for Batgirl, you would use a setup like this, and it would be insane. You could use the League of Assassins Depth Knives. You can use the LexCorp helmet. It gives 50% crit. Actually, the League of Assassins hood gives 50% crit, but Batgirl's personal gear item, the Nano Carbon Mask, also is usable. And crit chance on Special 1, more damage on crit attacks. You would actually use this gear item along with the Ibis Stick and the Cloak of Destiny, mostly for extra burn damage. And then that way, if you're using 600 Wonder Woman offensively, you could use, for example, Ra's al Ghul's Scimitar, the League of Assassins Depth Knives, and a blocking item like the LexCorp helmet. I don't know exactly if that's how they run it, but just check the players in multiplayer that you're facing, or check for the people with the team. They would probably know better than I would. And Killer Frost, again, you would probably just throw at least 2-piece 4th world. You'd probably throw the 3rd on, that way you can heal. And yeah, all you got to do is use Black Ice and win the game. You can use a Special 1 for healing. The Special 2 would also power drain quite a bit. So that's probably how you'd use that setup. And it's a really powerful one. So yeah, this is a really dangerous team even to this day. 600 Wonder Woman does gimp your team in stats, but because she gives so much to both Batgirl and Killer Frost, it works really well. So Arkham Knight Batman usually runs with Killer Frost as well, and you can also run Injustice 2 Superman. You can use Arkham Knight Batman with the same setup I usually use. The Enchantress gear, League of Assassins, Adeptnize, and the Ibis Stick, and that would be perfectly acceptable. You can probably get away with just throwing basic damage gear on Injustice 2 Superman, and you'd be perfectly fine. A lot of people will run 4th World and just make him super annoying. But I really think you can just run basic damage on Injustice 2 Superman and he'd be okay. Like, you could run, for example, the Knife Collection and 2 damage gear items, and you get healing out of Special 1. It's exactly kind of how I gear up Red Sun Superman, except I gear for special damage. And that would even be acceptable too, except that Arkham Knight Batman does some ridiculous things with the League of Assassins, Adeptnize, and the Ibis Stick. You don't even need that on Injustice 2 Superman. You can just tank hits with either Killer Frost or Injustice 2 Superman and use Arkham Knight Batman to overwhelm you with special ones. He'd have power generation. Killer Frost would dampen it. This team is annoying as hell. Now, if you want to use a Batman more defensively, like, for example, 2-piece LexCorp and, let's say, Ra's al Ghul Scimitar or something, you could even do that. And that would also work really well, allowing Injustice 2 Superman to do the bulk of the damage. You can use a setup like this. Gotham Justice is a really good ability. And yes, this would be annoying because Dawn of Justice Batman can evade specials. Injustice 2 Superman can absorb specials. So specials could be deemed useless with this setup. And if you try to stun Injustice 2 Superman, it's not going to work. This is a cancerous team. Arkham Knight Batman also works to be cancer. You don't want to face this team. It's going to piss you off a lot. Unless you are doing, of course, the Red Sun team, in which case you actually have a chance. So, Batman Beyond you obviously can't use. You do have the stun immunity. The problem is Batman Beyond is not a defensive card. The problem with animated Batman Beyond is he's not a defensive card. His health pool is a little bit weak at 1100. So, while animated Batman Beyond can do damage, the problem is his Batarang is a single hit, which might not always be a problem because the Future Bat is a 3-hit move. Now, obviously, if you have the Ibis Stick and you're augmented your animated Batman Beyond, it probably doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to overwhelm Raven if you have to worry about a health swap, and then the final 2 hits will hit on somebody else, which is pretty cool. Now, let's talk about Red Sun synergy here for a moment. And we'll talk about Blackest Night synergy too. So, Red Sun Batman, if you use Red Sun Batman in any multiplayer team, you would use Red Sun Green Lantern, and you would use Red Sun Wonder Woman. You cannot use Superman with this team. It does not work. You have to have power generation regardless on the Red Sun team. Now, if you're using this setup, you would have to use the League of Assassins, the Adept Knives, the Ibis Stick on Red Sun Wonder Woman. You'd also have to run a healing item on Special 1. So, Red Sun Wonder Woman would be your main damage dealer. Now, in the case of Red Sun Batman, that's not entirely true because Red Sun Batman can come in and stun. And instead of using, for example, a heal, you could even get away with using Cloak of Destiny on Wonder Woman. And as long as she only comes in and does special damage, that's acceptable. So power generation is pretty important on Red Sun Batman. However, you'd probably want to go with LexCorp to be a little bit defensive, and you'd probably want to run Ra's al Ghul Scimitar because he's got the faster attacks, and that's good. Now, we've also been running the 2-piece LexCorp on Green Lantern. However, in this setup, you'd have to go with 3-piece. That way, Green Lantern can heal. Unfortunately, a Special 1 is garbage, which is why usually when I'm running the Red Sun team with Superman, we're using 2-piece LexCorp, and we're also using the Enchantress, or the Scarecrow Mask. The reason the Scarecrow Mask is a very good gear item for Green Lantern is because you can reflect specials. And because of that, you actually gain power from that. I think it's better than using Ra's al Ghul Scimitar because not only do you absorb a lot more damage, if both the Scarecrow Mask and the LexCorp chestplate go off, you take 0 damage from blocked attacks. There is a way to take 0 damage. Granted, it's only 20% of the time, but yes, you take 0 damage if both elements go off. The Scarecrow Mask always goes off. LexCorp 20% of the time. So it's a pretty good setup. And
Wonder
when you're
Woman.
using this setup with Wonder Woman, you would obviously throw the Fourth World set on Wonder Woman, and it would work great. Because her special 1 does enough damage. If you have full augments, it does like 60,000 damage by itself, and it's pretty good. So all you have to worry about is shield tosses. Wonder Woman can defend herself, and even if Red Sun Superman gets eliminated, it would work really well. Now, my Superman obviously lost augments when I tried to buy Blackest Night Batman a little bit cheaper, but this is the setup I use, and it works really well because Red Sun Superman gets enough healing. I think he gets like 18,000 or 15,000 when he heals on Special 1. But the burn damage on the guy is really important when you deal with Fourth World. The area damage is really important to try to knock other people out. Now, the advantage that Injustice 2 and Dawn of Justice Superman have is that the Flying Punch can knock somebody out, and the final hit can hit on somebody else, which is actually better. But this still works. You can use the same setup on Injustice 2 Superman or Dawn of Justice Superman, and it's fine. Obviously, more on that later. So, Red Sun Deathstroke you don't use because obviously his passive does absolutely nothing. Red Sun Superman does more damage. Speed is not going to win you fights. Doing damage is going to win you fights. Solomon Grundy got replaced with Red Sun Green Lantern. Red Sun Solomon Grundy used to be used until Green Lantern came along, and the reason for that is adding 45% health onto Red Sun Superman and Wonder Woman made them able to survive long enough to be able to beat, at the time, Shazam and Double Killer Frost. You had to use that Solomon Grundy to buff that, and his Dead's Blood actually worked pretty good off the tag, so in this day and age you would throw the two-piece LexCorp and the Scarecrow's mask on him, and that would be acceptable, because Solomon Grundy would be hard to kill. You'd do a lot of special 2 damage, you wouldn't heal a lot, but because he wouldn't take damage, it's pretty important. Thank you, Harry Spencer, for the follow on Instagram. Appreciate you, bro. So let's talk about some Blackest Night synergy. Obviously, Batman is an auto-include in any Blackest Night team. Thank you, Dylan, for the like on Instagram. Appreciate you, bro. So, Blackest Night Batman in the little tiny patch 2.12, which you can actually do the challenge for another 4 days. Batman deals more damage as the opponent's health depletes. This equates to about 100% more damage. That's why super moves can do upwards of 300,000 damage, and basic attacks can do 100% damage. We've done some testing on this. If you don't believe that, go look at the Blackest Night Batman standard difficulty and you can see for yourself. Blackest Night characters receive an additional 10% unblockable chance for each Blackest Night member on their team. So, specials can have up to a 30% unblockable chance, and Doomsday can get to like 80% unblockable chance on basic attacks. So, which Blackest Night characters are actually worth using? Obviously, we have Blackest Night Doomsday, we have Blackest Night Martian Manhunter, and we have a new element, Blackest Night Hawkgirl. Out of all cards, Doomsday is the easiest one to exclude. It's not that he doesn't do any damage, the problem is his passive does the least. So these are the 4 Blackest Night characters that you can use. All 4 of them can be useful. You have to have Batman on your team. Hawkgirl is pretty useful because you get a resurrect mechanic, and Hawkgirl can heal herself, which is not mitigated by the Scarecrow mask. So Blackest Night Hawkgirl, Blackest Night Doomsday basically just does more special damage. While that's not a bad mechanic because his Black Plague does ridiculous damage, you can even gear him up with the League of Assassins, Deponize the Ibistic. The problem with the Blackest Night team is that Blackest Night Batman is not a defensive card. Hawkgirl and Martian Manhunter do have 2-hit light attacks, so you could gear up Hawkgirl offensively with the Rashogul Scimitar and 2 basic damage items, or you could even use the Blade of the War God and one gear item I've really liked in multiplayer, the Gauntlets of Azeroth. Don't underestimate this card because if you have an augmented Hawkgirl, you can probably heal for about 20,000 health if you're at 5250, which obviously I'm not. This is the same setup I use in Raven for Survivor mode, and it's really good. So you could use that setup with Hawkgirl. You could also use the setup with Martian Manhunter. However, for Martian Manhunter, I really like the 2-piece LexCorp with the Ibistic because you need burn damage. Burn damage will also trigger off the life drain mechanic, so it's really powerful. It also gives you more damage on your sole survivor, so that's pretty important because you get 50% of the damage healed from your specials when you're in the life drain phase, and in the defensive phase, you're not really going to take damage. So while Blackest Night Batman does take a lot of damage and he does suffer, so for like example, you're probably going to be using a special 1 to heal a lot, but for example with Batman, you would have like the Prometheum Longsword, the mutated bone spikes, and let's just say the power to Screaming Sticks would be leveled up as well. So you'd have two characters that are offensive, even though Hawkgirl is more utility. Batman would be doing the bulk of your basic damage, and you'd have to heal through special ones as necessary. The main weakness for the Blackest Night team resides in dealing with Killer Frost. To effectively deal with Killer Frost, you actually have to go with the League of Assassins Adept Knives and the Ibistic route, and the only one that can actually do that effectively is Blackest Night Doomsday. The problem lies there is that you can't use Blackest Night Hawkgirl in that way. You would actually have to use Doomsday. Now, it's unfortunate because Hawkgirl does give everybody else a revive mechanic. Blackest Night Doomsday, however, is the tankiest of the cards. So you would throw 3-piece Fourth World and just pray to God you don't get eliminated by the time you get to a bar or two. But that would be the way you'd have to gear up Doomsday or Martian Manhunter. I think gearing up Martian Manhunter with that mechanic is better using the Fourth World, because you need Doomsday to be able to do special damage, but you also need to block. So for Martian Manhunter in this case, you would use the Fourth World on him, because with the defensive phase he gets survive a lot more. You can't gear Black Knight Batman defensively. If you do, you would have to go with the 2-piece LexCorp. That's the only way you can gear him defensively. Now, there's a couple of wild cards of this. For block breaking, you have the Soul Taker Sword. It also gives you a stronger heal on Special 2. But the important thing is now you get 60% unblockable chance on basic attack. So if the opponent tries to block spam with Fourth World, that's not going to work. And the Knife Collection also the Mutated Bone Spikes for Doomsday gives you an 85% chance of unblockable basic attacks, which is insane. And Doomsday also heals on Special 1. So there's a lot of combination with the Blackest Night setup. You're going to have to play around with this quite a bit and see what actually works best for you. Now, one card that I used to love using in Survivor mode before I learned how good the LexCorp chestplate is Doomsday. Now, the thing about Doomsday that makes him one of the best cards that you can buy outside of challenges is the fact that Doomsday gains 50% health. This used to be really bad when people ran Killer Frost, but because of the regen mechanics, you don't see that anymore. Doomsday is also one of the only cards in the game that can actually benefit from Cloak of Destiny before anything else. Obviously, Luchador, Bane, Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, and Martian Manhunter Prime also benefit from the Cloak of Destiny, but in a lot of other cases, it's not better to use that. But with Doomsday, if you're running 2 basic damage gear items, along with the Cloak of Destiny, you actually do more basic damage than if you run single items, because Doomsday does 150% damage on his second attack. So, as long as you have him augmented, he can do pretty well. So, teams with Arkham Origins Deathstroke. The problem I have with Arkham Origins Deathstroke really working with, say, Arkham Knight Batman and Arkham Harley Quinn is that you don't use his Identity Crisis. While it does hit several times and you're more likely to get unblockable chance, a lot of people use Point Blank. So, in the case of Arkham Origins Deathstroke, you would have Arkham Knight Batman on your team, and you would have Arkham Harley Quinn. My problem with Arkham Harley Quinn, like I talked about in the buffing bad cards video, is that Arkham Harley Quinn is pretty much a dead card. You would basically throw 2-piece Fourth World and pray to God you don't get obliterated, and you would throw on the dual 357 revolvers, and you would do all of your healing through the Special 2 move. And obviously the Fourth World helmet is for blocking Fourth World chestplate, so you can actually take hits to get to 2 bars. This again gets hard countered if everybody uses Killer Frost, because you would have to gear up your Arkham Knight Batman in the way I usually run him with the League of Assassins Adept Knives and the Ibistic. And the problem then lies that Arkham Origins Deathstroke does not get enough power to get to 2 bars. And if you get off a Point Blank, you would be really lucky. So that's the main weakness, and it's a lot of weaknesses because of Killer Frost. You don't generate enough power to be able to use the stuff. So that's an Arkham team that can work. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So in the case of Regime Black Adam, this is a really interesting card because Regime Black Adam does double damage to opponents that use specials against him. So this screams actually using Fourth World on Black Adam. If the Special 2 worked as good as Kandak Black Adam, I would say 2-piece LexCorp. But you need a quick way to heal, and Special 1 does that. Special 2 guarantees a power drain, whereas on Kandak Black Adam, it does not. And I think LexCorp is better on Kandak Black Adam because the Special 2 can actually hit multiple opponents, whereas this one does not. So,
Black Adam.
Why is health gear super important on Regime Black Adam? 40% health does give you 40% more shield mitigation, which is effective 80% more damage. So, you throw 40% health on Black Adam, sure, that ain't very much, but it's an extra 20,000 health. So instead of 108,000, you'd have about 130,000 health effective to work with, and with the 3-piece fourth world, it's really good. Now, his Kandak garb does allow you to do some other mechanics. Keep in mind, life drain on Special 1 is not very good because the electric burst doesn't do enough damage. But you can effectively get your health up higher if you use other mechanics like, for example, the Riddler Staff, which gives you more health. The problem with this is, if you get blocked, it does nothing. Whereas the fourth world actually gives you regen. So, I don't recommend the Kandak garb. I think this is the best way to gear up Regime Black Adam.
Black Adam.
But you generally don't want to use the card because 750 is horrible. That's like garbage dumpster. Elseworld the Flash garbage dumpster. Now, in the case of Kandak Black Adam, he can actually do some pretty good damage, and I've also used the 2-piece LexCorp to work really well. We're going to do a fight with Kandak Black Adam, and let's get some tankier cards. Let's get an Apocalypse Darkseid, and let's throw in Suicide Squad Harley Quinn. We're going to do a fight within Bonus Battle 6. We're going to show off the usefulness of Kandak Sheikh Ahmed Habibi with Ra's al Ghul Scimitar and 2-piece LexCorp. I think that's the best way to gear him up, because his Special 2 does do pretty good damage.
Begin. And
also, the light combo ender does drain a half bar of power. So, it doesn't work as well in single player, but it's pretty good. And we're got the Kandak Black Magic. So maybe see a heal. Thank you, Punch is God for the follow on Twitch. Welcome, God of Bastard. Alright, so we're going to go through Kandak Black Magic again, and watch the health just soar up like nothing. You don't get the power drain mechanic, but that basically just steals the full. Darkseid comes in. So Darkseid getting power drained by Kandak Black Adam. As long as you get 1 out of 2 combo enders, you can keep somebody power drained. It's pretty good. So let's get somebody down. Hopefully we don't get bombed. Alright, damage boost is fine. It does like nothing. Let's get Harley Quinn low. And we're going to show off the Kandak Black Magic hitting a second person. Very useful, very strong. That's why 2-piece LexCorp is amazing with Ra's al Ghul Scimitar and Kandak Black Adam, and that's the best way to gear him up. So yeah, Kandak Black Adam, especially with Killer Frost, which is the ideal combination, actually does really well in Survivor mode. And you would probably throw in Raven for health swapping. It works really good. So the optimal team, in my opinion, for Kandak Black Adam would be a team that looks like this. And when you use it in Survival, amazing. If you're not using it in Survival, you probably use Injustice 2 Superman. That way you have a little more defensive tools. So this would be a Survivor team. And this would be a multiplayer team. And it would work really well because Killer Frost dampens power, Kandak Black Adam power drains, and then Injustice 2 Superman pounds your face in. So, really strong team for multiplayer. Don't underestimate Kandak Black Adam. He can do some really good power draining, even in single player, when you use Ra's al Ghul Scimitar. Now, unfortunately, Amikami Catwoman, as I talked about in the buffing bad cards, don't play this card. If you want to do damage, play Arkham Knight Catwoman. Damage over time effects cannot be rinsed by tagging out, except if you use Injustice 2 Aquaman, who can throw dots back on you, and then those dots don't get rinsed out, and your Arkham Knight Catwoman gets destroyed. Damage over time becomes more powerful with each Arkham Knight character on the team, and that does include the Arkham Knight. So, a lot of people, when they're using Arkham Knight Catwoman, gear her offensively. So, you would run a team kind of like this, and your biggest defensive card would be Arkham Knight Batman, because Arkham Knight Catwoman is not defensive. You don't gear up the Arkham Knight defensively. You would use stuff like Ra's al Ghul Scimitar and 2-piece LexCorp, and that's good enough. Arkham Knight Catwoman, you could focus on Special 1 with the League of Assassins, Death Knives, the Cloak of Destiny, and the Ibis Stick, The problem being is that then you'd have to put Fourth World on Arkham Knight Batman. But this is how you would get the ridiculous damage on your specials. You'd have it set up like this. The Cloak of Destiny crits, your dot damage does so much more.
Catwoman.
And then the Arkham Knight, you can
Knight.
use that setup. I think that's the best one because it's well-rounded. And then Arkham Knight Batman, you would probably use defensively. Like you'd throw on the whole Fourth World set. And I think that would be good enough.
Batman.
And that's how you gear a team balanced, where you use Catwoman kind of just throw in, do a special, and get out. I think that's the best way to use the Arkham Knight team. You could use Arkham Knight Harley Quinn. However, and that might not be bad either compared to the Arkham Knight. The problem with Arkham Knight Harley Quinn is that she's, squishy just like the Arkham Knight. In fact, more squishy than the Arkham Knight. As you can see the stats right there. So Arkham Knight Harley Quinn can't take as many hits as the Arkham Knight, who can actually take some hits. And with the 3-hit light combo blender, if you really don't give a shit about healing on special 2, you can actually use the Gauntlets of Azrael instead of the LexCorp chestplate, and that would be good enough. Then you can actually throw heals on Arkham Knight Catwoman. Arkham Knight Batman becomes even more annoying. And yeah, I think this would actually work pretty well too. Don't underestimate the Gauntlets of Azrael because it can heal quite a bit. So we're going to go into another fight. Obviously, Arkham Knight Batman has to do all the work, but we're going to try to show off some of the Arkham Knight Catwoman mechanics, and we're going to try to show off the power of the Arkham Knight healing, even without promotions. So the power generation is mostly there because you have to counter Killer Frost. So we're going to go off the Cat Claws, and it doesn't really do much damage because this is not an Elite 7. Actually, he picked up dot immunity, so it's going to do nothing. That battery is going to do some work that might take out the Arkham Knight. No, it does not. However, Catwoman definitely will. So, again, you got to worry about the stun mechanics. Although Arkham Knight Batman will survive just well, the other two cards were not promoted. The Arkham Knight normally would not get obliterated like that. However, in multiplayer, he might, because stun is going to do so much damage. So now if we're using a special 2 on the Arkham Knight, that's an unpromoted Catwoman doing like 1200-1300 damage and already cycled back to the special 2 because of power generation gear.
Playtime for kitty.
And you can see the damage 1551 and 1511, so it looks like the damage going away with the Ibis. Keep in mind, the Ibis stick and the LexCorp helmet damage do stack with one another. And that also does not get rinsed when you tag out. So the Ibis stick can be really good to fuel the special damage on Arkham Knight Catwoman. So a little bit sloppy with the Arkham Knight, but you kind of get the idea how the team works. Do you need the Gauntlets of Azrael on the Arkham Knight? No. You could just use the 2-piece LexCorp and give the Arkham Knight a personal heal. Batman can heal himself, and Catwoman really doesn't need it. So that's how you would use the Arkham Knight team, and it's pretty good. So, there's a lot of tips and tricks, obviously. Batman Returns Catwoman would probably actually be used with the Arkham Knight. However, it's the same thing. You get no difference whether you use Batman Returns Catwoman or Arkham Knight the Arkham Knight. However, if that is the case, then you want to use Batman Returns Catwoman, but I'm pretty sure that there is no difference. Which is really unfortunate because it's supposed to be 100% damage. It's not. So, using that does nothing. Teen Titans Cyborg is garbage. We're not even going to talk about him. Apocalypse Darkseid in today's meta is garbage because the Fires of Apocalypse does not burn if it gets blocked. Now, Apocalypse Darkseid is a really interesting card because he can be geared multiple ways. So the Black Racer causes a random unique effect on the opponent. Basically what Black Racer does is it either gives you a really big lifesteal, the bleed does 15% damage, the curse guarantees crits. So you don't even need crit augments, crit damage matters more. But crit chance doesn't matter when you're cursed. Obviously, against the Red Sun team, it doesn't matter. So we're going to use a couple setups here with Apocalypse Darkseid. We're going to give him Ra's al Ghul Scimitar. We're just going to give him straight damage gear because that's what fuels the lifesteal. The more basic damage you have, the bigger lifesteal you get. So let's throw in... Obviously, you would use Killer Frost along with Apocalypse Darkseid to maximize the benefit, so the opponent can't special you down. Now, who would you use with Apocalypse Darkseid? It's a really good question. I would probably say Injustice 2 Superman would be your best bet, because, again, he's a really strong offensive-defensive card.
Superman.
So we're just going to throw some basic damage on Injustice 2 Superman. Hopefully Apocalypse Darkseid can get the job done, but we'll just have to see. So let's give him some basic damage gear and test that out. So we're going to see how good an unpromoted Apocalypse Darkseid is. Keep in mind the bleed obviously stacks with crit chance, crit damage, so you can make it pretty insane. I do see people that use two-piece LexCorp with Apocalypse Darkseid just to give him more defensive tools. So Sinestro got eliminated, no problem. You can add a power drain from Rashomon Scimitar, not really necessary. I would like to see a lifesteal. There's the curve. So you can see hits are critting now. There's the lifesteal, 5620 on an unpromoted Darkseid. That's insane. And keep in mind, sky's the limit when you have augments and promotions. It gets even now. And Killer Frost keeping the opponent power drained. You can see an 832 bleed. And it looks like they stacked. You see 1663, so the bleed mechanic stacks. Apocalypse Darkseid, even unpromoted, is a really good card. I highly recommend it. So he's going to bleed out. And we're going to go off the I Am Many Things. Lex Luthor eliminated. Keep in mind this is maxed out silver cards that Apocalypse Darkseid just shredded up like nothing. What's going on, Aaron? How you doing, bro? So I did not quite take out Lex Luthor, but good enough. Apocalypse Darkseid is a really solid card at Elite 7, and expect him to be one of the cards I probably promote after the Suicide Squad in the weeks to come. So, really strong card. Obviously, you pair it with these two, and it's really good. Like, Injustice 2 Superman, you could probably throw in, like, every team except Suicide Squad, and it'd be just fine. You don't use the Suicide Squad team apart. You just don't. And if you do, it's Unhinged, who kind of sucks anyways. So, speaking of the Suicide Squad team, obviously, I run Deadshot. I run Harley Quinn. And I also run regular Joker, not Unhinged. Now, gearing these guys up is a little bit complicated because there are several ways to do it. I personally prefer the special damage route with the Joker. And I gear him offensively special. That means the Ibistic Enchantress card and the League of Assassins Detonators. Why this setup? Obviously, special ones don't do so well with Suicide Squad the Joker, but keep in mind, 50% of the bang damage will hit everybody else, and because he gains power, that also fuels burn damage, so the opponent will burn away. They have to tag out. The Enchantress gear is not going to work, and they can't really do anything for a couple seconds. They can't do specials until the Enchantress gear gets fixed, so that's a really powerful setup. That's what I like to use on the Joker.
Harley Quinn.
Now, on Harley Quinn, I actually find Fourth World to be the most powerful, and that's not the Fourth World Mace. So I find that this works on Harley Quinn because her Goodnight Kiss is ridiculous. It's a lot better than the Bag of Tricks. And if you need to use the Bag of Tricks, you don't need LexCorp to fuel bombs. You don't do that. So I think Fourth World is the best on Harley Quinn because she's the tankiest card. Now on Deadshot, you can go two-piece LexCorp just to kind of play more survival. But I found that in offense, you don't really need to do that. You just gear him up with basic damage, and he'll just shred opponents. I think that works a little bit better.
Deadshot.
So we obviously can't deal with people that have like 57,000 health. We might be able to, but it'd be a little bit tricky. We'd probably have to synergize really well with Harley Quinn and use the LexCorp. But I've actually had like a 60 or 70% win rate in multiplayer using that setup. And I actually have the order. Actually, I think I had the Joker in first. Deadshot second and Harley Quinn last, because the Joker does generate a lot of power with the League of Assassins Detonators and the Ibistic, and it's just good enough. This is the team setup I used. Now, Unhinged is a rather interesting one, because he's got the same slow attacks that Suicide Squad the Joker has. The problem is he's more offense and less tanky. Suicide Squad the Joker is more tanky because of the Maniac passive, because he takes 20% less damage, and Suicide Squad member on your team. Now, in the form of the Killer Croc gear, you can get more mitigation, damage reduction from specials, damage reduction from base attacks, and dot damage. the problem I have with using Killer Croc's gear item is that the Ibistic and the League of Assassins knives are deadly together. Your Enchantress gear can throw people off your game because you can't do specials until after the Enchantress gear wears off. So, while Killer Croc overall is a better card, I think Enchantress gear, until they fix the bug, is actually better. So there's your 4 Suicide Squad characters, and yes, the Unhinged character has, I believe, 50 more damage but 50 less health, and that's a big deal when Suicide Squad the Joker has damage mitigation and Unhinged the Joker does not. So, Suicide Squad the Joker Unhinged, I feel bad for you, you suck. And that's why when you're playing the Suicide Squad team, use that 3. It's a really good team. And I don't feel it gets shut down by Killer Frost because the Joker can just gain power and he can power drain, sometimes on his random abilities. So Containment Doomsday was somebody I talked about that does not need a buff. And I really feel that's the case because you're not buffing a bad card. It's not really a bad card if you know how to use Countless Deaths. And because he can survive 3 times, he has that synergy in Survivor mode, you're also going to get matched up with easier opponents because you're using a weaker card. The characters that you get in multiplayer are based on your stats. So if you're using a Containment Doomsday, why aren't you using just silver cards? It's basically the same effect. So Man of Steel General Zod unfortunately sees no play. The card sucks. Arrow Green Arrow would see play if he had more damage. Now obviously how you'd gear up Arrow Green Arrow, you'd probably throw Rashomon Scimitar in the 2-piece LexCorp. He'd have some damage mitigation. He could power drain on his combo ender. And the freeze mechanic is really powerful because it's an unblockable special when you freeze an opponent. So, if you played the stalling game with Arrow Green Arrow, and then you tag in Injustice 2 Superman and just pound your face in, that could work. John Stewart Green Lantern, everybody knows that used to work amazing with Red Lantern Hal Jordan before he got nerfed into the ground. If you're looking for a video, search the 20+ Beware My Powers in One Fight video. You can see how ridiculous Red Lantern Hal Jordan used to be and how much he sucks now. Speaking of Red Lantern Hal Jordan, the card sucks because he can't be healed. As I talked about in the buffing bad cards, if he could be healed by other sources and not from regens or direct heals, the card might see some play. It might be fun. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It really sucks. So Animated Harley Quinn has the Insurgency Harley Quinn light attack. It has the garbage heavy attack that Prime and I think Insurgency Harley Quinn has it too, but Arkham Harley Quinn is the worst offender, so is Bronze Harley Quinn. Animated Harley Quinn can make some highlights when you're using 600 Wonder Woman and Killer Frost. It does work because Killer Frost by herself is insane, and you're adding 50% damage and power generation. That's good enough. Obviously, you would use Animated Harley Quinn in a support role. Batgirl doesn't really have that good of stats. 600 Wonder Woman doesn't have really good stats, but Killer Frost can be used as a tank. So that team works. It's a little bit tricky, but it can work. And we already talked about Arkham Harley Quinn. Arkham Knight Harley Quinn falls under the same category. Suicide Squad Harley Quinn we obviously know about. Now Hawkgirl is an interesting card because you can tag in and out faster. So when you pair that with Regime Hawkgirl, now the enemy can't use specials, so you can tag out between the two. They can't tag out, they can't use specials. So, what would be a good card with that? Probably Killer Frost because you wouldn't take special damage. Or you could use 600 Wonder Woman and maybe, just maybe, with a little bit of luck and power draining, because Hawkgirl does have a 2-hit heavy attack, maybe you could actually use this team, but I don't think so. I think the team sucks. And you'd have to omit one of the Hawkgirls and throw in Cassandra Cain Batgirl to be used as an offensive juggernaut, and maybe then it could work. But 600 Wonder Woman with Cassandra Cain Batgirl already works really well. Apparently I can't read my B's and C's, so you could use this team and kind of just swap out so the opponent can't tag out. Use Cassandra Cain Batgirl. You'd probably have burn damage on Hawkgirl and just slowly whittle the people down, but yeah. It'd be interesting. That'd probably be the best way to use Hawkgirl and not suck with it. You could use Black Adam to keep the shields on longer too, but I really don't recommend it. I think Cassandra Cain Batgirl in her current state is a way better card. So moving on down the road, we already talked about Red Sun Synergy. We already got to Hawkgirl. and Killer Frost. Killer Frost is one of the most
Frost.
annoying cards in the game to deal with on a defensive team. Because of this passive alone, it causes nightmares. Even if you use Killer Frost by herself, it's annoying as hell. Especially if you're not running power generation, which is why I like Red Sun Wonder Woman so much, because of the power generation. This card itself has probably caused a lot of people to quit Injustice multiplayer. Now, Regime Killer Frost, again, used to be really good before they introduced Fourth World into the game, because the only healing you had was direct healing or healing from Harley Quinn's team healing. So until they actually have a card that adds regen healing in, this card is going to see no play. If they ever add a card in that reduces regen effects by 90%, I can guarantee you're going to see it in every battle defensively. And Regime Killer Frost might even make a return with Injustice 2 Superman. So have fun looking for those teams when it comes out. Now, Lex Luthor by itself is not really a good card. Obviously, you see me use Bronze Lex Luthor all the time in single player because the 15% damage basically lets me do more damage with Deathstroke. You guys see me use that all the time in single player. Now, if you're struggling on battles, let's say you're trying to do bonus battle 6 or 7 with a team like Mortal Kombat Scorpion and Regime Wonder Woman, let's just say. Even though the cards are not really that good. But in the case of Crypto Lex Luthor, like if you're a newer player, sometimes that 30% health is what you need to win a battle. You also have supplemental power drains that work really good when you're not running Killer Frost. So if you're just starting out, and this is your team for bonus battle 7, Crypto Lex Luthor could actually be better than throwing in, let's say, an Insurgency Joker, because 30% health is a strong mechanic. An Insurgency Joker, even maxed out, I think is not better than Crypto Lex Luthor. I could be wrong on that, but 30% health can make a difference, especially if you're trying to level up cards. Like, let's say Earth 2 Solomon Grundy was your only card along with Lex Luthor. Mortal Kombat Scorpion gained 30% health, and he could survive from that. So there are uses for Lex Luthor, just like there's uses for Prime Batman. If you're struggling with fights, try out Lex Luthor and Prime Batman, or even animated Harley Quinn, or even use 2 of them together, and you might see a world of difference, and you might win fights that you otherwise might not. Now, Bounty Hunter Lobo also suffers from the same problems that Bane and Solomon Grundy do. The card is just too slow and unplayable. If this passive was on, say, a Batman or even a Superman, although you'd probably want Special 1, the passive would be really good because everybody uses Arkham Assaults with Arkham Knight Batman. It's a really good mechanic, especially if it throws them off guard from the tag. Martian Manhunter is a really interesting card. The reason Martian Manhunter is an interesting card is because he has stun on Combo Ender. He can also power drain off nothing. Even if you don't use Rasha Rule Scimitar, he could power drain off nothing. So an optimal gear setup, if you're using Martian Manhunter by himself, would be Cloak of Destiny, the Ibis Stick, and the League of Assassin Death Knives. Now your Special 1 does a lot of damage.
Martian Manhunter.
And it would be acceptable. So let's go into a fight in Bonus Battle 6, and we're going to show off this mechanic with Martian Manhunter. Obviously, Earth 2 Solomon Grundy is going to be annoying, but let's see how this works. With the power generation, we could probably super move out Earth 2 Solomon Grundy and be okay. So with the extra power generation, you can get to 1 bar a lot quicker. There, the opponent Martian Manhunter stuns. So with the Cloak of Destiny, assuming we get off a stun, there's another stun. That could be really bad. Luckily, we only took 12,000 damage. Alright, so there's a stun. We're going to go off the Phase Assault. 45,000 damage. Hits for like 20-something thousand on everybody else. So you can see that does a nice chunk of damage. That took out like 2/3 of the Joker's health. So we got another stun. We kind of want to get the Joker out because Martian Manhunter could cause a problem for us dealing with Earth 2 Solomon Grundy. So we're just going to let him rot away. We're going to use the Can't Stop Grundy, and hopefully this will get rid of the Joker. Although since he blocked it, probably not. Look at all the hits. Alright, so there's Martian Manhunter. Let's just get rid of him with the Joker.
Gotta learn to smile.
But yeah, you can use Martian Manhunter's stun in a good way, and that was without a crit. If you have crits, you can do over 100,000 damage with that. So let's try to avoid that. That's fine. Let's see if we can get a stun. There we go. So we got the Pillar Slam on Earth 2 Solomon Grundy. And you can see the first hit for 41,000 damage, the second hit would hit for 40,000. It's just like when you're using Red Sun Superman, comparing the Flying Punch to the Man of Steel. You're going to get 3 hits versus 1. The difference is when the opponent's stunned, you're going to do so much more damage. Now, obviously, the bad thing about using the Pillar Slam is that it doesn't do area damage, whereas the Phase Assault does. So, Martian Manhunter is a really cool card. He's one of my favorite cards in the game for fun utility. Obviously, Arkham Knight Batman is my favorite. But Martian Manhunter can be useful. Don't underestimate him. Especially if he's augmented. So, next up we have on the chopping block, New 52 Nightwing. New 52 Nightwing is a cool card, except passive lasts for 3 seconds. Why can't this last for like 30 seconds? Why can't it even last for 10 seconds? The duration that somebody can tag in and out. It should at least last that long. But the problem with New 52 Nightwing is that he's just too slow, and there's better options for power drain. You could even run Cantbag Black Adam, and he'd be more useful than New 52 Nightwing in today's meta, unfortunately. Now, Raven is the best card in Survivor mode because twice per match, when Raven's below 20% health, she swaps health with her opponent. When you're dealing with like waves 8, 9, and 12, you're going to be dealing with radiation. And it's very easy for Raven to swap. Obviously, you want to take a little bit of damage. And Raven is one of those cards you can use utility on. Like, you can use Rosh Ghul's Scimitar, you can use the Cloak, the Gauntlets of Azrael, and you can use another basic damage item. And in Survivor, that just makes her even more annoying. In multiplayer, that can make her annoying because she can do like 9,000 damage and heal you right up. Obviously, the optimal teams would be using like Injustice 2 Superman in multiplayer. You can use Arkham Knight Batman in multiplayer, but I think Injustice 2 Superman is a little more flexible. So, like, the ultimate annoying team would be something like this. You would have Injustice 2 Superman, Raven, and you'd have Killer Frost. So you'd have the dampening, you'd have the health swapping, and you'd have the special mitigation, assuming the opponent can even get to 1 bar. Which, a lot of times when you're running Killer Frost, that doesn't happen unless you're running power generation. So, this is a really powerful team. It's going to do some crazy stuff, and it's going to rip your hair out, or you're going to do really good in the game. Now, speaking of cards that people used to use, let's talk about Shazam. This was a setup that people used to use, although a lot of people used to use before Fourth World. They used to use another Killer Frost, and that was Regime Killer Frost, because it just worked. You dampened power, they couldn't use specials, and even if they could use specials, they couldn't heal from it, which back then was the only way you could beat out teams that use a setup like this. And obviously Shazam, back then, you didn't have gear sets. You would have like the Ibis stick, which worked really well to wear people down. And you'd probably just have basic damage or special damage. Killer Frost and had her personal gear on, which was really good, and it gave you a heal. Shazam probably just used like the knife collection for his healing, or Bane's gear to get more health, and it worked really well. But Fourth World came around, Regime Killer Frost became useless, and will continue to do so until Dots affect it. Now, Mortal Kombat Scorpion, here's a fun fact for you guys. When patch 2.0 came out, the Hellfire did double the damage that it does now. Or at least it did like 33% more. Doomsday Special 2 also did that. So, unfortunately, they fixed a lot of this stuff, and unfortunately, Mortal Kombat Scorpion has become less and less useful over time, as the meta is now 1,400 damage and 1,500 health or something like that. It's crazy, but yeah, that's why Scorpion isn't usable. And Mortal Kombat X Scorpion, fun fact, before patch 2.7, when augments actually worked for crits, this was the only card in the game that could stun, like do automatic crits outside of Apocalypse Darkseid when he curses you. And this was the easiest one to trigger, so you could run the Ibis stick along with something that gave crit damage, which back then was LexCorp, and it would be insane. You would do like 30-35% burn damage on somebody, and then if you're running somebody like Hawkgirl, they can't even tag out. So there is some merit to using Hawkgirl on teams with a lot of burn damage or extra burn effects, or even Arkham Knight Catwoman, because yeah, you do less damage, but they can't tag out, so it's process of elimination. Now, everybody used Antimatter Sinestro back in the day with Batgirl, and that basically hindered your team, because when here's a fun fact for people too. When a lot of people used to use Batgirl with Antimatter Sinestro, and they used Ra's al Ghul's Scimitar to put you at 2 bars. Well, it turns out that when the computer is using Antimatter Sinestro, are they going to use Death from Above on you? No. They're going to use the Meaning of Fear, and that's actually going to be worse than using Death from Above and Power Drain chaining you out. And if you use this effect before they fixed the League of Assassins Adept Knives to work whenever somebody tagged in versus when you tag in, it was a lot better. So we're going to show off this mechanic really quick because it's a really important one. And let's find the League of Assassins Adept Blade. So we're not going to use 3 bars.
Sinestro.
And let's not use Killer Frost because I really don't want to deal with power dampening. So we're going to use this setup again in Bonus Battle 6 just so we can kind of get a mirror match. And let's swap Batgirl. Actually, I think this should be fine. So we're going to swap out the Batgirl. And you're going to see how the League of Assassins set works now. So we're going to tag in Batgirl and do some damage with Antimatter Sinestro. Obviously, in a perfect world, Batgirl will do a lot more damage than that. Using the Ibis Stick, her personal gear, and something else. So there you see the Meaning of Fear by Sinestro and not that. So now, the way that the League of Assassins gear works, you have to tag Sinestro in. They tag out. And there goes the effect. I don't even think I saw area damage because Bane didn't even take damage. Bulk of the damage came from that. So Bane took that much damage from the special one, but as you can see, it was good enough. I don't even think I saw the high damage in there. But it used to be really good because it would do like 30,000, 20 or 30,000 damage when it went off. And when you were playing Survivor, you could just chain that until wave 12, unless you ran into somebody power drain immune. So that's basically how it works. Unfortunately, the force tag out, I don't think actually works like that, and it doesn't steal as much power as it used to, so that's fortunate. Because that used to be broken as well, and you can see Antimatter Sinestro is not broken, and still uses special 2s instead of power drain you, so that's really bad. Now, Boss Solomon Grundy, unfortunately, is one of those cards that you just can't play. The reason for that is because he just doesn't do any damage. You can use light attacks, but as we all know, light attacks are used for combo enders, not for raw damage. Boss Solomon Grundy is way too slow. I don't even think buffing his speed would help. Like, I made a suggestion in the buffing bad cards, and this is why his gear slots aren't even unlocked, because it just sucks. The Knife Collection, I think, would be a lot better gear item if it gave Solomon Grundy 50% speed instead of 25% unblockable chance on basic attack. Solomon Grundy might actually be playable if his heavy attack hit at a regular speed. But as you know, it's like, blah, 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 you suck.
Solomon Grundy.
So if you want an example of how slow Boss Solomon Grundy is, let's just use all 3 Solomon Grundys. We're going to gear up Red Sun Solomon Grundy with basic damage. We'll leave the Knife Collection on that Solomon Grundy. And we're just going to try to chain heavy attacks, and we'll see how well it does. Let's use the mutated Bone Spikes just in case we get some gold cards.
Begin.
So there you see the pains of trying to use Solomon Grundy's heavy attack, and when it gets blocked, you're basically screwed. The block breaker effect is kind of cool, but how often are you going to see that go off? So there's double damage. Wouldn't it be nice if Solomon Grundy had speed on his gear? Wouldn't that work so much better? Yeah, so now he's hitting for 637. Keep in mind he has Ra's al Ghul's Scimitar as well. There's 5x damage. And he's still getting blocked and comboed. He's probably going to kill him, but let's see. Yeah, you have to use the light attack to actually be usable, and Solomon Grundy cannot use basic attacks for the life of it. As you see, he tried to wind up a heavy attack. Green Arrow outsped him and knocked him out. He tried to attack, and Green Lantern beat him to the punch. That's exactly why you can't play Solomon Grundy, like, ever. Unless you're using Dead's Blood or the Can't Stop Grundy, at which point, Can't Stop Grundy actually does decent when it doesn't get blocked, and even if it does a little bit of damage. But it just sucks that you have to use light attacks on Solomon Grundy, which is absolutely worthless. So yeah, that's why Solomon Grundy needs a major speed buff, Bane needs a speed buff, Lobo needs a speed buff, and Sinestro needs a speed buff. Look at that, a whole bar of power from using that ability, and already at 2 bars. So yeah, you basically gain a power by taking a bar of power by taking a taser trap, and almost 3 bars by blocking a high gear, because you gain a bar of power. So yeah, Scarecrow Mask is legit. Obviously, if you're using the helmet and chest plate, I don't know if power generation affects that. That would actually be a really good test. We might have to do a second fight and throw the LexCorp on him and see how well static does. Taser Trap did generate a lot of power. Well, here we just have to watch out for redemption. Using the Art of Deception, that won't do much. And down goes Batgirl. So we're going to try the same mirror match again. And we're going to try to use 2-piece LexCorp this time instead of power generation gear. Obviously, if you're using taser traps, that's good enough.
Static.
But let's try to block a high gear. So, same team.
Begin.
So there's a bar of power. It looked like static generate. What? Why was static generating power? Does Scarecrow Mask like reflect damage because he took damage? I never knew that. Does it always work like that? So that's like an infinite loop. What the hell? And because static gains power when blocking. That's insane. Yeah, now I see why static is ridiculous. Gains the power from Aftershock, so now he can high gear again. This is insane. And all it is 2-piece LexCorp and the Scarecrow Mask. Because it reflects every hit, he gains power. Insane. How do you kill static? Like really, how do you kill static? And this is an unpromoted static going up against level 40 Elite 5. So you just put him to 2 bars. And because of the LexCorp chest plate, he gets up to 2 bars. Well, that'll kill him. But yeah, that's just insane.
Hold this for me.
I knew static was a fun card. I don't think I appreciated how fun the card really was. Holy crap. So it looks like the damage that you reflect back, you don't really notice it in multiplayer, but in single player, you really do notice it seems like. Or maybe I just never went up against somebody with multiple hits. It seems like in multiplayer, the reflect doesn't actually give the opponent power, but in single player, it does. Really interesting information. I never knew that's how it works. So this is not going to kill static, it's going to piss them off and give them more power. Unless you die, then it doesn't matter. And then we got block spamming Martian Manhunter. That still doesn't change, but we're going to get rid of him. But yeah, apparently Static can do some crazy things when he gains power blocking. Two-piece LexCorp in the Scarecrow mask is legit, guys. Definitely try it out. That was insane. Until he actually took an unblocked special, he was literally going toe-to-toe with cards way better than him. So yeah, get that Scarecrow mask leveled up. Alright, so, as you guys know, Metahuman the Flash is a pretty offensive card. Let's talk about... So 8526. Keep in mind my Wonder Woman is not augmented. Or you can see heals for like 16,000. So you did have some healing with Dawn of Justice Wonder Woman. Again, it's the real saving grace for healing. Especially if you like threw Fourth World on Dawn of Justice Batman and then used two-piece LexCorp on Superman. Lead Rain's going to do minor damage. I'm not really worried about it. But yeah, it's an unreliable way to heal. I still think Dawn of Justice Wonder Woman is pretty bad. Because when you shield toss and it gets blocked like so, you heal for like 536. You don't heal for the 10,000 damage you do. So you basically heal for nothing, and it's a worthless ability. Like, I used to think that Dawn of Justice Wonder Woman would be a good card because of the passive, but once I learned about it blocking, it's just trash. Don't use it. If you use a card like that, use the Arkham Knight, you're going to thank yourself later.